What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. All right, guys. So today I want to do a segment that I haven't done in quite some time. So I guess you can call this the return of the return of. Now, in the return of series, basically I played devil's advocate and I tried to justify taking one of the banned cards and placing them back to limited status. I tried to talk about maybe some of the reasons why the card was unfairly still banned, or some of the reasons why I believe that the card shouldn't be banned anymore, or some of the effects that it would have if it was unbanned. So on and so forth. I'm going to change it up just a little bit today, and I'm going to talk about a card that I believe it's limited, and it should no longer be limited. It should be placed on unlimited status. The card I'm talking about today is Solemn Judgment. And Solemn Judgment is a very unique case because it's one of the only cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! that I honestly think it's more unhealthy for the card to be limited than it is for it to be unlimited. And the only other card that comes to mind when I pull up that type of criteria is Raw Oppression. And I say that because in certain formats, in past formats, this card has been staple, but I always feel like the player who draws it first has an immense advantage. Take Raw Oppression, for example. The last time Raw Oppression was legal and it was limited to one, that bitch was an absolute staple in everything that could run traps. And the problem with Raw Oppression was, you'd have player A who just went synchro spam or went special summon crazy, and then when player B tried to do the same, player A would flip oppression over, and it was just like, ha, you're locked out. You can't do anything. It doesn't matter if we can't special summon anymore. I've already got all my big monsters on the board, but you can't put any big monsters to counter mine. And then, player B was just like, oh, well, guess I'm fucked. It could even be in positions where player A just simply got a monster like a Thunder King, and player B just couldn't answer it without special summoning, or certain decks just got completely shut down. And one of the reasons why I feel like Oppression at 3 was kind of okay was because you never had, even in special summon crazy formats where the mirror match was the most prominent match, like Glad and Teledad formats, you never had players ever main decking 3 copies of Raw Oppression unless it was specifically anti-meta decks. And that's why I always thought, well, if the only deck that can main 3 Raw Oppression is decks that don't special summon at all, then I'm pretty much okay with that. Solemn Judgment pretty much feels the same way. In past formats, it's been absolute staple. But, it feels like the player who draws that Solemn Judgment first just has a huge advantage. Because outside of a monster effect, you have free range to stop anything your opponent does. Granted, it comes at a hefty price, but if you're a very skillful player, chances are that's not going to be the determining factor in who wins the match. You stopping what the hell you want to stop is, though. I look at Solemn Judgment, and I think one of the key factors why I think that this card should go back to 3 is because of another card, Solemn Warning. A Solemn Warning is a card that I could say is pretty much, it's like near staple. And people have always kind of worked on the consensus that I have. You play the max amount of Solemn Warnings allowable. And if people are going to play, let's say, 2 Solemn Warnings, and then Solemn Judgment was unlimited to 3, that's going to be really, really risky. You're basically playing on the razor's edge. And that's one of the reasons why I think that if Solemn Judgment was unlimited, you probably see players losing as many games as they were winning because of Solemn, especially if your opponent happens to do a back to the wall, play where they kind of force your Solemn, like with a Heavy Storm or a Dark Hole or a Monster Reborn, like a real power card or something like that. You're going to have players who maybe they don't use Solemn correctly and they end up losing the game because of that. Especially when you have, the game that we live in where you have so many one-card exceeds, whether it be a tour guide from the underworld, a wind-up rat, or a rescue rabbit. You have to think about it. If you burn a Solemn early, and you're playing 3 of them, so you're much more likely to draw it. You're basically a rescue rabbit away from losing. Your opponent throws rescue rabbit on board, gets 2 Sabersauruses, that's 3,800. Unless if you've taken any other damage in the game, you've lost. So you have to really think about that. Solemn Judgment at 3, and the reason why I attribute it to my Raw Oppression at 3 argument, it's a card situation that can't work in every deck. Could you imagine running 1 copy of Solemn Judgment in Dark World? I've actually seen some players do it effectively, but 3 copies of Solemn in Dark World, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work. Like, Dark World's one of those decks that takes too many direct attacks for, multiple Solemns to work. You could potentially have to burn something, or burn a Solemn on a macro, and then, you have another Solemn set, and it's like your opponent just uses a Monster Reborn and wins the game or something like that. You know, I look at Solemn Judgment at 3, and I'm like, you have to specifically construct a deck, or you have to be a very, very extremely skillful player to make Solemn Judgment work at 3. Especially if, you know, you're going to play Solemn Warning with it. I don't see people just randomly dropping Solemn Warning just because they can run more copies of Solemn Judgment. You know, what I'm basically saying is Solemn Judgment is a card where you have to build around it, not the other way around. And with the card currently limited, with it at 1, you can pretty much throw Solemn Judgment in anything. I mean, I don't understand why Mermaid Atlantean players can't play 1 Solemn Judgment. I mean, it's not like you can blind MST them anyway because of Abyss Spear. So this is one of those times where, you know, the card at 1 can kind of be splashed into everything and do a whole bunch of damage. But if it's at 3, you can't splash it in, you know, much of everything. Like, you have to specifically construct it. And even then, you know, playing Solemn Judgment at 3, if you're just in a bad situation or you don't play it right, chances are you're going to lose more games because of it than, you know, than not having it. So let me know what you guys think about this. You know, a lot of people say that some of the most skillful formats ever, you know, were formats where Solemn was at 3, Glad format, Teledad format, mirror matches, stuff like that. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching, as always. Oh, and because of measures out of my control that require me to take trips to Atlanta, Orlando, Nashville, and Baltimore, I'm bringing back the whole click and ad campaign. Yeah, those are not for leisure. They're strictly for business. Job interviews, guys. So click an ad, and thank you very much.